Welcome to my channel. Today, we're diving deep into an exciting original narration. What if Beru rebelled against the monarch? This story will take you on a thrilling journey through rebellion, loyalty, and the struggle for freedom in a dark fantasy realm inspired by solo leveling. So sit back, relax, and immerse yourself in part 1 of this epic tale. Beneath a sky painted in the ominous hues of deep red and swirling black, the Shadow Realm stretched boundless and silent, a void ruled by power and survival of the fiercest. In this realm of endless war and unyielding loyalty, Beru, the once mighty Ant King, now stood as a soldier under the monarch's iron command. The air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke and blood, haunting reminders of the ceaseless battle recently fought. The ground beneath was littered with the broken forms of shadow soldiers and monsters, victims of the war's ruthless hand. Flickering shadows, remnants of the last fight, danced faintly in the stale air. Beru surveyed the aftermath, his eyes cold yet clouded by a surge of unfamiliar emotion, doubt. He stepped lightly over a fallen comrade, a low-ranking shadow soldier who had hesitated in battle and paid with his life. Under the monarch's laws, hesitation was treason, obedience was survival. Yet, Beru couldn't shake the growing question echoing inside him. Is blind obedience truly loyalty? Or is it chains disguised as allegiance? He thought back to his past life, before becoming a chained soldier, when he was the Ant King, commanding with freedom and strength. Back then, he fought for sovereignty, not subservience. Now, his very existence was bound by the monarch's will, his victories hollow trophies of obedience. Memories crowded him, faces of innocent humans caught in the tide of conquest, shadows loyal yet broken, monsters battling for mere survival. Was this endless carnage the path of justice or tyranny? The whispers of rebellion stirred faintly around him. Quiet voices questioned the will of the monarch, hesitant but growing in number. Shadows exchanged cautious glances and veiled words, sowing the first seeds of doubt and resistance. Among the shadows, Beru found himself pulled between obedience and conscience, between fear and hope. The war was not just against kingdoms and monsters, it was within the Shadow Realm itself, a battle for freedom, identity, and justice. As the crimson sky darkened further, Beru's sharp gaze locked on the horizon. A silent vow formed in his heart, to seek a path where shadows were not mere pawns but beings of will and purpose. The icy silence of the Shadow Realm was punctuated only by the faint rustle of unseen wings and whispered conversations carried on the cold wind. The aftermath of the latest battle had left the land scarred, trees splintered by arcane blasts, earth scorched by relentless fire, and shadows moving warily among the ruins. Beru retreated from the fading battlefield, his mind a storm of conflicting emotions. His doubts had grown into seeds of defiance, but rebellion was dangerous, a sin punishable by obliteration. Yet the unjust executions, the meaningless cruelty inflicted by the monarch's absolute rule, burned fresh in his spirit. Among the scattered remnants of shadow soldiers, Beru sought counsel with those he trusted most, a small circle bound by shared disquiet. They gathered covertly in the hushed caverns beneath the citadel, places where the monarch's eyes could not reach. In the shadows of that clandestine chamber, voices emerged, not loud and reckless, but wary and resolute. Why must we all suffer for the monarch's hunger? Whispered a voice thick with pain and anger. Another answered, we are not mere tools for destruction. We were once free, and freedom is our true strength. Beru's own voice, steady and commanding, broke the silence. Every order we obey deepens the chains that bind us. We must question, if not for us, then for the countless lives crushed beneath the monarch's will. The others nodded, their eyes aflame with hesitant hope. But they also knew the stakes. Treason, if discovered, meant not just death but annihilation. Meanwhile, the monarch viewed these growing shadows of dissent with cold calculation. A summons was dispatched. Beru was to answer before the throne. The monarch's gaze was sharp and unforgiving, icy as the void from which they pulled their power. Beru, Your strength is unmatched. Your loyalty, unquestioned, or so I believed, the monarch's voice echoed ominously. Why do whispers of rebellion taint my realm? You are a weapon forged for conquest, not a pawn in petty games. Beru's heart thundered, yet his voice did not falter. My victories are shackled victories. I serve not out of blind loyalty, but because I believed in a just cause. But justice requires compass, not chains. The monarch's glare deepened, the shadow realm trembling with raw power. Obedience is the bedrock of power. Without it, there is only chaos. Choose your path carefully. The meeting ended, but the rift between loyalty and conscience had been irreparably opened within Beru. The fracture lines in the shadow realm expanded, each whispered out a crack in the impenetrable facade of the monarch's rule. As Beru left the throne room, his resolve hardened. He would not be a mere instrument of tyranny. A revolution was kindling, quiet, dangerous, unstoppable. The shadow realm was changing. Beneath its dark skies, in the hidden corners of the monarch's sprawling fortress, murmurs of rebellion spread like whispers in a storm. Beru moved carefully through these shadows, not as the monarch's warrior, but as a man bearing a secret fire. He was no longer a tool for conquest but the spark that dared to challenge the darkness. In cramped caverns lit by flickering shadows, Beru convened a small circle of trusted allies. These were not mere soldiers but souls hungry for justice, some wary, others fiercely hopeful. Each carried scars of battle and doubt etched deep. Their meetings were cloaked in secrecy. Every word was a thread weaving a tapestry of quiet defiance. They planned not with the roar of armies but with the precision of whispers and shadows. Beru spoke softly, yet his voice carried a fierce conviction. We must be patient. Our rebellion cannot be loud. It must be unseen, like the silent breath of winter before the storm. We protect those who suffer and strike those who feed on fear. The group listened, their spirits alight with cautious purpose. Small acts of resistance began, warning scouts of hidden ambushes, interfering discreetly with the monarch's orders that would devastate innocents, and spreading hope through hidden networks. But the monarch's spies were watchful. Shadowy figures moved silently through the halls, seeking signs of defiance. When rumors of dissent reached the throne, the monarch's fury grew cold and lethal. Beru's defiance was no longer a personal struggle, it was a battle for hearts and souls, between those who obeyed out of fear and those who longed for freedom. Tensions rose. Trusted allies vanished mysteriously. Ambushes near the shadow realm's edge increased. The once fragile calm shattered. Yet through it all, Beru's resolve hardened. Every small victory, every life saved sparked a flame that could not be extinguished. The silent uprising had begun, and it would either ignite a revolution or be crushed underfoot. The walls of the monarch's fortress vibrated with chill fury as the news of Beru's quiet rebellion reached its icy throne. The monarch's eyes glowed with an intense, unforgiving light. Betrayal was a shadow just as deadly as any blade. Beru undermines the foundation of order, the monarch whispered in a voice like cracking ice. Such defiance cannot stand. Shadow assassins, loyal to the monarch's will, were dispatched, silent hunters cloaked in darkness, trained to root out dissent and snuff it without sound. Their paths crossed with Beru's on more than one occasion, just shy of deadly confrontation. Beru's crew of rebels moved with equal caution, weaving through hidden tunnels and abandoned ruins, always a step ahead in this deadly game. He saved innocents with stealthy precision, sabotaged cruel orders, and spread coded messages of hope and unity. With every action, the opposition grew more determined. Finally, the inevitable confrontation erupted. When the monarch ordered the destruction of a peaceful human enclave, an act meant to crush flame of rebellion, Beru could not comply. He rallied his allies, determined to protect the innocents against overwhelming odds. The battle was fierce, a clash of ice, shadow, and ruthless power. Beru's allies fought valiantly, wielding a mix of shadow powers and guerrilla tactics to turn the tide. The sky bore witness to a spectacle rarely seen, a soldier openly defying the monarch's wrath. At the climax, Beru faced a cadre of elite shadow generals sent to quell the uprising. The fight was brutal, raw with desperation and conviction. Beru, once a king bound by obedience, now fought as a liberator bound by conscience. The battle left the Shadow Realm trembling. The monarch's grip showed cracks, but its fury was undiminished. Beru was declared a traitor, a curse upon the realm. The shadows that once whispered now carried a storm. Beru, branded a traitor and hunted by the monarch's relentless forces, fled into the forsaken wilds beyond the realm's borders, lands where ancient magic wove chaos and forgotten beasts roamed. Pain and loss marked every step of his exile. The echoes of battle rang in his ears. Former comrades turned enemies, their eyes filled with cold accusation. Yet, within this desolation, Beru found the crucible that would forge a new path. Every night beneath the fractured stars, Beru reflected on the unbearable weight of both loyalty and freedom. Scarred and alone, he nurtured a growing philosophy, strength tempered by compassion, power wielded to protect rather than destroy. The wilderness was merciless. Twisted monsters spawned from the chaotic magic plagued his journey. But where others saw despair, Beru saw opportunity, slaying these creatures not for conquest, but to safeguard those forgotten by the monarch's shadowy reign. His survival was an act of quiet rebellion. As he moved through forgotten ruins and labyrinthine forests, Beru uncovered relics of ancient monarchs who ruled with wisdom and justice long before the current tyranny. These discoveries ignited hope, a vision of what the Shadow Realm could become. Among the scattered remnants of oppressed monsters and disenfranchised humans, Beru found allies, warriors and wanderers who believed in a cause greater than fear and bloodshed. Together, they forged bonds that transcended old hatreds, united by a shared dream of liberation. Survival became revolution. Beru was no longer just an exile. He was a beacon for those yearning to rise from darkness. Each dawn was a step toward reclaiming a future where shadows no longer bowed blindly but stood proud and free. The shadows of the forsaken wilds stretched endlessly under a sky veiled in perpetual twilight, a domain where chaos and ancient magic intermingled. Here, Beru, the exiled Ant King, tread carefully, not as a conqueror, but as a beacon of hope amid despair. The journey from exile had been brutal. Every step demanded vigilance. Hostile creatures twisted by corrupt energies lurked in the shadows, remnants of a world fractured by the monarch's unyielding dominion. Yet, for every threat, Beru found opportunity. His presence whispered through hidden villages scattered across the wasteland, lonely monsters, forsaken hunters, and oppressed shadows who had lost faith in the monarch's reign. Each tale he heard, of cruelty, loss, or reluctant submission, fueled his determination to forge something new. In the trembling heart of an ancient forest, Beru convened with these outcasts. The clearing glowed faintly under the eerie bioluminescence of strange fungi, the air thick with anticipation and uncertainty. Faces marked by hardship and resilience turned toward him, their eyes flickering with cautious hope. "We have suffered under tyranny too long," Beru's voice resonated, calm yet commanding. "The monarch's chains bind us all, but chains can be broken. Together, we will build a shadow realm not of fear and obedience, but of justice and freedom." His words forged bonds that transcended old enmities. Hunters who once hunted shadows found common cause. Scorned shadows and misunderstood monsters pledged loyalty, not out of fear, but conviction. Training began in earnest. Beru shared tactics honed from battles past, combining guerrilla warfare, shadow magic, and alliance diplomacy. He inspired unity through action, rescuing villages from corrupt enforcers, sabotaging the monarch's supply lines, and offering sanctuary to those fleeing oppression. Yet, even as their strength grew, the burden of secrecy weighed heavily. The monarch's spies prowled ceaselessly, and whispers of rebellion attracted deadly attention. One night, under a veil of stars, Beru stood atop a crag overlooking the encampment. The flickering campfires below symbolized a fledgling hope, fragile but alive. Our path is perilous, he mused quietly, but this is the dawn of a new order. We do not just fight for ourselves, our uprising is the promise that shadows can reclaim their souls. The chapter closes as preparations intensify, setting the stage for a war that will shake the Shadow Realm to its core. Allies gathered, hearts steeled. The rebellion that Beru ignited threatened to burn away the monarch's iron grip. News of the growing resistance reached the throne with venomous swiftness, penetrating the stillness of the monarch's obsidian chamber like a shadowy dagger. The monarch's gaze burned with fury and determination, a storm incarnate, ready to crush all dissent. Beru's defiance is an affront that will not stand, the monarch declared, voice echoing through the cold halls. I will extinguish this flame before it becomes an uncontrollable inferno. Colossal armies, powered by ancient monarch magic and relentless shadow enforcers, were deployed with terrifying efficiency. They swept like shadows at dusk, eradicating rebel outposts, crushing villages that harbored insurgents, and hunting Beru's allies with ruthless precision. Skirmishes erupted across the Shadow Realm, battles where fire met frost, where shattered light struggled against consuming darkness. Beru led his forces with desperate cunning, transforming guerrilla tactics into sweeping counterattacks. Every fight was a test not only of strength but of conviction and will. At the heart of these conflicts were personal duels. Beru faced fallen comrades, once brothers in arms, now merciless enemies driven by the monarch's will. Each clash brought painful reminders of loyalty fractured, of a realm divided by chains of fear and hope. Meanwhile, the monarch's power grew darker, ancient and cosmic energies fueling devastating spells and monstrous creations that turned battlefields into wastelands of shattered stone and crackling energy. Despite overwhelming odds, Beru's spirit did not waver. His resolve, bolstered by the loyalty of his allies and the justice of their cause, shone like a beacon amid turmoil. The chapter ends with a massive siege, Beru's forces encircled but refusing to yield, the monarch's forces pressing with crushing force, and a storm of magic and steel impending that will decide the revolution's fate. The Shadow Realm was ablaze, not with the fire of conquest, but with the burning will of revolution. Beru's forces, though outnumbered and encircled, fought with the ferocity of those who had nothing left to lose but their chains. The siege began before the pallid light of dawn, the monarch's legions pounding against rebel fortifications like an unyielding storm. Arcane barrages illuminated the land in bursts of electric fury, tearing through walls and pouring destruction upon all who resisted. Inside the rebel encampment, Beru moved among his soldiers, not as a distant king, but as a warrior and leader, sharing their pain and courage. We stand at the edge of darkness, he told them. But even the faintest light pushes back the night. Hold fast, for liberty, for the future we deserve. The rebel forces, drawn from monsters, shadows, and humans alike, had learned to fight as one. Their bond, strengthened like tempered steel by the fires of persecution, shattered expectations and gave birth to moments of terrifying brilliance. The monarch's assault was relentless. Spells of cosmic havoc and shadow corruption tore through ranks, monstrous enforcers crushed hope beneath crushing blows, and the very earth seemed stained with despair. But Beru's rebellion was no fleeting candle. They answered every assault with fierce resistance, guerrilla strikes, ambushes in the dark, and rituals weaving shadow magic with ancient wisdom salvaged from forgotten eras. Amidst the chaos, the battle was not bloodless. Friends fell, wounds deepened, and the weight of sacrifice pressed cold but necessary. The siege climaxed in a dramatic battle beneath the shattered moonlight. Beru stood face to face with a monarch lieutenant, a duel pulsating with the energy of clashing loyalties and unyielding wills. Though battered and weary, Beru's unwavering spirit ignited the hearts of all who fought beside him, kindling a hope that even the monarch's shadows could not extinguish. The storm still raged, but the revolution had shown its strength. The siege had entered its grueling second month under a sky perpetually veiled in ash and shadow. The once invincible might of the monarch's forces, fueled by ancient cosmic power and an unyielding will, had begun to falter, not due to lesser strength, but because of something deeper, something more human, spirit and unity. Beru stood atop a jagged outcrop overlooking a narrow canyon where his forces lay in ambush. The scent of burning wood and magic hung on the air, punctuated by distant clashes of steel and the thunder of hooves. Each moment measured the course of revolution. Years of tyranny had forged hardened soldiers and brutal enforcers in the monarch's name, but they had never faced an enemy quite like this, a revolution born from doubt but nurtured by hope. Among the ragtag rebels were humans who had suffered under monarch-imposed oppression for decades, shadow soldiers who had cast off chains of obedience, and monstrous beings exiled for choosing mercy over cruelty. The former enemies now marched united, their bonds tempered in fires forged by shared pain and purpose. As the enemy approached, Beru's voice rang out, calm and steady yet filled with the fire of conviction. Today, we fight not merely for survival but for rebirth. Let them see that shadows have will, souls, and the strength to reclaim their destiny. The rebel forces surged from hidden nooks and craggy ledges, unleashing ambushes that shattered supply lines and forced hasty retreats. Shadow magic coiled like serpents, binding enemy commanders in spectral chains. Arrows kissed by frost flew from unexpected angles. The battlefield became a symphony of chaos, a dance of light and dark, offense and defense. But it was not just tactics that won hearts, it was the army's spirit. Cheers erupted where silence once lived, songs of hope and resistance echoing through the ravines. Beru moved among his ranks, offering encouragement, listening to battle-weary voices, and standing as a symbol of resilience against impossible odds. Yet the cost was heavy. Every victory bled lives, friends, and futures. Beru found himself haunted by the faces of fallen allies, their sacrifices etched vividly in his mind. He grappled with the weight of leadership, the fragile balance of pushing forward without forsaking those who depended on him. Under cover of night, he would retreat to a quiet glade, where the stars pierced the shadowed canopy. There, he found fleeting peace in the memory of a past self and the vision of a future free from fear. But even as the fires of rebellion burned brighter, darkness deepened in the monarch's shadow. Ancient spirits stirred, titan-like enforcers were reforged in molten void, and whispers spoke of a power long dormant, one that could rend realms and unravel destinies. Beru knew well that the coming confrontation would be unlike any before. The fate of the shadows, monsters, and humans alike hung precariously. The rebellion was alive, fierce, but the war was far from won. The night before the decisive battle, Beru gathered his closest allies around a flickering campfire, a circle of faces illuminated not just by flame but by fierce determination. "This is more than a conflict," he said, voice steady. "This is a reckoning. We fight not just to break chains, but to build a legacy. Tomorrow, we will cast our mark upon history, either as the shadows who chose freedom or as whispers lost to the void." As embers curled into the night sky, the promise of dawn carried the weight of an entire realm. Dawn broke over the shadow realm with a muted glow, as though the very skies themselves braced for the fierce storm to come. The air was thick with tension and anticipation, a fragile calm before the cataclysm. The land stretched vast and scarred, a battlefield where loyalties would be tested and fates forged. Beru stood resolute atop the highest ridge overlooking the expanse of the final battlefield. His eyes burned with fierce determination, heart heavy with the knowledge of what was to come. The revolution he had kindled was poised on the edge of history, balanced precariously between triumph and ruin. Below, his forces gathered in tightly knit formations, a mosaic of shadows, exiled monsters, and determined humans. Their faces reflected the fatigue of endless struggle but also the unyielding hope for dawn after darkness. Across the field, the Monarch's legions advanced like an unstoppable tide, armored titans wielding ancient cosmic magic, shadow commanders exuding raw power, and spectral beasts whose howls silenced entire units. As the two armies faced each other, silence reigned, broken only by the distant call of war horns and the murmur of whispered prayers. The battle began with a deafening roar. Magic crackled through the air as elemental forces clashed, frost met flame, shadow met light, and the ground itself trembled beneath the onslaught. Beru led his forces from the front, his frost-laden sword a beacon as he cut through enemy ranks. The air around him shimmered with his command of shadow and ice, each strike a blend of power and purpose. Mid-battle, Beru faced his most daunting challenge yet, a duel with the Monarch's most feared lieutenant, a shadow commander forged from the darkest void. Their clash was brutal, a storm of swirling shadows and crystalline frost, embodying the deep struggle between tyranny and freedom. Around them, the battlefield surged with chaos and valor. Allies fell and rose, magic flared, and the very fate of the Shadow Realm hung on each moment. Despite the overwhelming odds and crushing power of their foes, Beru's forces held fast. Their unity, courage, and the righteousness of their cause shone through the darkest hours. As twilight descended, the echoes of battle faded into a grim silence. The outcome was uncertain, victory was hard-fought, and the cost immense. But the rebellion had etched its mark onto the heart of the realm, challenging the Monarch's dominion and illuminating a path toward a new era. Beru, battered but unbroken, looked to the horizon, a dawn of hope and an uncertain future awaiting his leadership and vision. The battlefield lay silent beneath the first soft light of morning, a tapestry of ruin and hope woven across the scarred land. The roar of war had softened to distant whispers, leaving in its wake a realm transformed by blood, sacrifice, and conviction. Beru stood amidst the remnants of the conflict, his breath steady, gaze sweeping over friends and foes alike. The rebellion had survived its greatest trial, yet the cost weighed heavy. Broken bodies, shattered spirits, and the lingering shadow of loss filled the air. The Monarch's forces had been pushed back, fractured by unexpected unity and determination. Though battered, the might of the old regime still lingered, a dark cloud over the horizon. In the flickering embers of a makeshift campfire, Beru gathered his closest allies and new leaders across the diverse coalition. The atmosphere was thick with reflection, determination, and the quiet urge to build, not just survive. Beru spoke with calm resolve, his voice carrying the weight of his journey. This battle was but a chapter in a larger tale. The Shadow Realm will no longer bow to fear and chains. Together, we build a future founded on justice, freedom, and dignity. His words kindled a cautious optimism. Old scars would need healing, old grudges mending. The alliance of shadows, monsters, and humans was fragile yet promising, a testament to the possibility of unity beyond ancient divides. Plans for governance, defense, and rebuilding took shape. New leaders stepped forward, warriors, scholars, and visionaries inspired by the hope that revolution had sown. Yet Beru understood the challenges ahead. The Monarch's influence was not easily erased. Remnants of tyranny lurked in hidden corners, ready to sow discord. But for now, there was peace, a chance to breathe, to dream, to forge new destinies under a freer sky. As dawn's light bathed the realm in warm hues, Beru allowed himself a rare moment of stillness, a silent vow that the shadows, new era would shine brighter than any darkness before. Thank you so much for listening to part 1 of What If Beru Rebelled Against the Monarch. The shadows of revolution are just beginning to stir, there's so much more to come. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and share this story with fellow fans. Be sure